Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 5, episode 23. My name is Adil Ahmad, and I have Misophonia. This is a special episode. My guest has an Instagram account that is known to many of you at Misophonia Memes. She's the French-American New Yorker, Chloé, or Chloe as most of you Americans will say it, and you'll hear me accidentally say it in this interview. This is a rare opportunity to hear her story, her coping tips, her thoughts on the Misophonia community, and the advice that she shares with people who reach out. Misophonia Memes is not her main deal, not by a mile. She's quite a multi-talented individual, acting, singing, hosting her own podcasts, and I have a lot of links where you can see what she's up to, so please follow her on her social media, on her personal accounts, and you can join the conversation when this episode goes live. I'll be, of course, tagging her wherever I post this. Remember, I'm at Misophonia Podcast on Instagram or Facebook, and Misophonia Show on Elon Musk's new social media app. Once again, thanks for the incredible ongoing support of our Patreon supporters. If you feel like contributing, you can read all about it at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. One of the best ways to actually just get the word out is leave a quick review or rating wherever you listen to this show. And also, I hope that you share this amazing episode with Chloé on your social media. All right. Enjoy this treat. This is the legendary mind behind the Misophonia Memes, Chloé. Welcome to the podcast. Good to finally have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I guess, why don't you tell some people I'm sure listening kind of know who you are. Do you want to kind of share a little bit where you're located and we'll get into kind of like what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you made me feel like a celebrity. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, born and raised, still living in Brooklyn, New York. The things that I do, I act, I sing, I make TikToks, I run the Misophonia Memes Instagram account, famously.
Yeah, everyone's clapping right now, listening.
Oh, it's crazy because I have been doing it for a couple years. I started it with like a friend from college, and I genuinely did not think that as many people would care as they did. And so it's been a really fun journey of kind of learning that people care about it as much as I do.
So do you create them? You do the whole whatever photoshopping or creation yourself? Like these are all purely original?
I do, yeah.
Nice.
I have I forget what it's called right now, but there's an app that has like meme templates.
Mm-hmm.
I'll like go through it, or if I see a meme online that I think is funny, I'll find it and then like find an empty template and then come up with a joke that I hope people will laugh at.
No, I mean, it seems like it's like being done professionally, and like entire teams are sitting in Brooklyn.
No.
So
it feels like there's a little team of people in my brain.
Yeah, well, we'll get into our inner monologue later.
Yeah, sure.
Right. But no, that's cool. Yeah, and yes, and that just kind of grew. It's interesting because everyone's like talking about how they're looking for like serious information and research, and here like one of the most popular accounts is like just throwing these hilarious jokes around. And did you grow up just like hashtags and all that stuff, and just
I think so. I think honestly, it's been a couple years, and I knew about Misophonia for a really should I get into the origin story?
Yeah, please.
Jump topics. I first noticed it when I was about 13. And I think a couple years later, maybe the definition kind of became more popular.
Yeah.
I'm 25 now, for whoever wants to do that math.
And so that's probably around when the New York Times article came out, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I was one of those people who Googled it, and I was like, oh, yeah, 100% feel comfortable diagnosing myself with this. Like to a T, this is me. So I got really passionate about it because mine is pretty bad. I mean, I'm lucky to be able to leave the house, and I think a lot of people don't know that I have it, which I think means that I'm good at hiding it, I guess.
A lot of us are,
yeah. So it's, it's manageable, but it is still all day, every day for me. So it was something I was really thinking about a lot. And then in high school, I had a class about, I think it was called like neuropsychology. And I was talking to the teacher about it. They had no idea what it was, of course. And I just started getting really invested in like trying to learn more about it. So in college, I like took a psychology class and wrote a paper about it. And then in a film class, I tried to make a little film class about it. I was just like constantly
Yeah.
trying to get people to care or to know about it. And then I I like to think of myself as a funny person. And I figured that people aren't as interested in just like factual information. They usually like to laugh. And also for all of us who have it sucks so much that it's like fun to laugh about it or
It's a
fun to
good
feel like you can
coping
relate.
mechanism, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And like how often are we laughing when we have misophonia? Like
Right.
never. Like
Right.
literally never. Um, so it started off as me venting with my friend. Um, and also the fact that I was friends with this person. I don't know if I should like say her name, but she's a lovely person. Um, we were friends for years and neither of us knew that the other person had it.
Mm.
And then she mentioned something about eating, and all my friends were like, "Oh my God, do you have misophonia? Chloe has misophonia." And then we were like, "What?" um, and so it became like a way to talk to somebody else about it and to vent. And now it's just like, now I just do it for fun. But I'm so
Yeah.
happy people like it. It makes me really
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. I hope you keep doing that. 'Cause, yeah. As soon as anytime, well, yeah. Oh, I know you've created a new meme because I see it on like multiple accounts. It just kind of blows up immediately.
That's so
Um,
sweet.
and yeah, so then I guess maybe continuing to go back, like
Hmm.
before, before there, well, you said you've had it since you were 13. Do you remember anything before then, or kind of what were some of the events and who were the people? Like, all the my usual
Yeah, of
curiosities
course.
here.
No, of course. I honestly, I love listening to your podcast and hearing about them because it genuine, like sometimes I cry. I get so like, it's
Oh
so
yeah,
exciting
me
to
too.
hear. Yeah, like, oh my gosh, they experienced that too. My first memory is actually a really strong one. I know some people don't remember their first ones, but mine is like etched in my
Mm,
brain.
mm.
Um, I was in the car with my family, and my dad was tapping on the steering wheel, and he's a drummer, and tapping along to the radio. And for some reason, I wanted to like rip all my skin off and escape my body. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't handle the sound, and I didn't know why, but I needed it to stop. And I didn't feel comfortable saying that. So I was just sitting in the back seat of the car with my brother next to me, just like pushing my fingers so deeply into my ears that it was like making them bleed. And I was
Oh
crying. And I was like, my brother was like, "What the heck is going on with this girl? Like, what
yeah.
is wrong with her?" I think because I had such, like, because I experienced it so intensely, I think that's why I remember it so clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my mom noticed, and I'm not to put ideas in her head, but I'm assuming she was like, "Uh-oh, I know what this is," because she actually has it too.
Oh really?
She does. Yeah, I'm of the camp that thinks it's genetic.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
So
And
yeah,
and so
it was
what
bad.
was it? I mean, your dad was a drummer. It was probably not the first time he was tapping on something. Do you know like
No, and I
what?
really think that I was fine before that.
Yeah, yeah, but something just switched in the
Something
brain or something pushed you
something was
over.
different that day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm always interested to hear what people think causes it because the fact that it's like a light switch for so many of us is so interesting.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of poking around because, yeah, whenever somebody says that, I'm like, well, it doesn't seem like anything drastically new happened. Sometimes it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I've heard multiple cases of like a close grandparent passing away, and then the funeral sounds start to do it, and
Mm,
so then you can be kind of like, okay, well, maybe there's some that trauma, and if
right.
you've heard the episodes, there's tons of trauma that's been happening, well,
Absolutely.
that happened to people. Yeah, just curious if there's any. Did you move somewhere? Obviously, well, you were in Brooklyn always, so
Yeah.
it doesn't
My
sound
whole
like
life. Yeah.
it was probably well. And then I had a recent person suggest maybe, well, she said that it seems to be very tied to her hormones, and obviously, being around
Mm,
that age, maybe it's just something invisible was happening. I
yeah.
guess
I
that switched
honestly,
her.
I wish I could be a fly on the wall in that memory because I'm
Hmm.
sure there are things that were happening other than that event that I truly
Yeah.
cannot remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it could be
I
external, it could be
wish.
internal. Yeah. That
Yeah, it's so
something must have.
interesting. Ugh.
And then your mom, did she just suddenly get into go mode and just kind of start to try to help out, or was it like
Well,
uh,
I think she noticed that I didn't want to say anything, which to this day is
mm,
still a huge thing for me. I hate telling people that I have it. I hate telling people, "Hey, could you maybe not
hmm
because I'm gonna cry." Like
yeah,
um so I think she noticed that, and I think she kind of tried to quietly tell my dad to stop,
mm,
and it was like that for years, I think. I mean, it was kind of like not a big thing that we talked about, but at a certain point when it became clear that it wasn't an isolated event, and when I like ran to her and was like, "Look, there's a word for this." She was like, "Oh, okay. Let's talk about this." Like
yeah.
this is a thing now, which I
So
think
she
was
had not,
exciting for her too because she didn't
right?
know what her thing was.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
interesting. Yeah, she'd had it, and then you guys were able to talk about it once you read about it, and Um, oh, yeah, interesting. What about okay, so the other person, the guy, your brother,
Hmm.
yeah, how has he been, I guess, since you hear a lot about um sibling teasing and whatnot.
Yeah.
Was there a bit of that going on after after that day?
I think initially it was probably hard for him to understand because I also wasn't expressing myself clearly. Like, I wasn't like, you know, there's tapping on the wheel and it's bothering me. I think I was just like crying for no reason.
Yeah.
So I think at the beginning he was like, "Am I doing something? What's wrong with her? What's going on?" But when I grew up and explained myself properly, he's so supportive. He's like the most wonderful, supportive. He's always trying to make sure that he's not making a bothersome sound around me. And I'm one of the people who like family chewing sounds are really significantly more
Mm-hmm.
difficult for me. So we try to watch TV while we eat. We try to put on music. Like they're really, really understanding. And it's very lovely. Also, my brother's 8 years older. So like around
Okay.
that time he went to college. So we didn't
Okay.
live together very much after that.
So
Yeah.
he was more mature. I know
Oh yeah, sure.
boys
Yeah.
mature a lot slower, but he had the head start, I guess, of being older. Okay, that's
Yeah,
cool.
quote unquote more mature. Sure, sure, sure.
Yeah, right. Of course. And so how did you, so it seems like was it because of the support of your family that you were able to kind of like express it better and not kind of maybe, lash out as a lot of people do? I'm curious, did your mom kind of help you there? Just be able to manage it better?
I think I might maybe I'm giving myself too much credit. I still have trouble not lashing out, honestly. But I think the fact that nobody made fun of me, I think that was a really, really, really big deal for me. And
Mm-hmm.
also something that was really interesting for me when people started to notice the meme account and they would comment things like, you know, their experiences with people making fun of them, or,
Yeah,
as you've heard many times on this podcast, like making the noises on purpose to bother
right.
people. I honestly never had that. Not in my family, not in my college roommates who I felt like I needed to tell about it.
Mm,
Nobody. Everybody was super understanding. And I even had a roommate in college, and I like tell her this all the time, how much this meant to me. But one time I was being really, I just felt so guilty that I had asked them like to not eat chips around me or something like
mm-hmm.
that. And she was like, "Well, of course. I mean, if someone was telling you that they had a trigger for something with a different mental disorder, like, of course we would all take it seriously. Like, of course we would accommodate because why would we ever want to purposefully put you in such an uncomfortable and painful situation?" And she said it so matter of factly, like it was so obvious to her that I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I guess this is like something that we deserve to have taken seriously." So
yeah.
I've truly had only incredibly lovely people in my life. So I maybe that has probably helped, I think.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I hope
Yeah.
one day
Shout out to that
everyone kind
friend.
of yeah, exactly, and I hope yeah, more people become like that friend.
Yeah.
And we're not, misophonia is not the kind of the ugly duckling of mental health disorders.
I know. It's so sad.
And but you said, you still kind of lash out sometimes. So there is that constant struggle. I'm like that. I'm sure we all face. Have there been
Hmm.
situations maybe with strangers that it's been bursting?
Oh,
Chloe's been bursting at the seams
my
because
goodness. I have a frog
your
in my throat.
profession is. Yeah, it's all good. I cut all that stuff out anyways.
I know. I
Your
figured you would, but I was like, I don't want to make this sound for you either.
oh, it's okay. Well,
Okay.
as
Okay. I think I got it.
Misophone, I don't know. Well, you've been around other misophones, but somehow like just having another misophone around, like at least for me, the triggers are not quite the same as when
Mm,
it's a complete stranger and I feel like they have,
right.
they're doing something to attack me. I feel like that threat
Yeah.
level is not there. DEFCON level, whatever, is not quite the same.
Oh, yeah. Well, I feel like that's also probably for me with strangers on the subway, especially. I mean, I haven't gone on the subway much since,
Right.
that big old disease happened.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I, it's like that crazy thing where you're in a public space and someone is doing something. Like for me, a weird one is like newspapers. I
Mm,
just don't like someone crinkling a newspaper constantly. And that happens a lot on the subway, as you would imagine. And
right.
I
That
would
little
like
tick.
glare
Yeah.
at these people who are doing absolutely nothing wrong. They're just reading the newspaper, but my brain
Yeah.
is like, they're doing this to like harm you. They hate you. How could they?
Well, the way they twist the paper, I mean, they don't really
Yeah, you're
need,
right. You're right. Yeah, you're right.
they
Yeah.
could just
They,
hold the paper and it's actually easier for them to read because it's not constantly moving.
oh, but people like skim it, they'll skim
Yeah,
a section and then constantly fold it. Oh,
right.
absolutely not. So I've never hurt anyone. I don't think that's very common. I've never like really yelled at someone. My outbursts are more just like moodiness,
The glare,
crying,
movie.
needing to
Okay.
leave, the glare
Yeah,
for sure, the
yeah,
glare. Oh, the glare, yeah.
yeah,
But I feel so guilty about it. It's like, I've had it for over a decade. I'm at the
yeah.
point where I'm kind of like, you know what? They're not doing this to hurt you. Like they don't even know that you're bothered by this. So let's take it down a notch, you know?
Has the guilt been, we all, yeah, a lot of us feel that guilt, and it's multiple things. It's
Hmm.
like not wanting to be, not wanting to like impose on somebody, maybe, not maybe, seeing that it's causing distress in the other person. Have you seen
Yeah.
that, like where it's kind of caused distress in the other person, where they feel bad, and then you feel bad, and
Oh,
then that
oh
cycle
gosh, yeah.
continues to go.
Oh, it's horrendous. Absolutely. That especially, I mean, especially since I have such understanding people in my life,
Hmm.
the point to which they're like, "Oh no, did I do something that was terrible for you?" Then I go on the I go like I swing fully the opposite way and I'm like, "No, keep eating. I don't care. I'm
Right.
sorry." Like,
Right. Yeah. 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 No.
please.
Yeah, I think we're all kinds. Do you and then for, I guess, for coping mechanisms,
Hmm.
I'm assuming it's like, the earbuds, the leaving, you said,
Yes.
is it, do you try to tell yourself anything to kind of prepare for situations where maybe you don't have those earbuds, to kind of like, because I mean, I think with with some of your jobs, you're
Hmm.
probably, it's a lot about just attitude and personality, right? I think I've talked to another actress and
Hmm.
model before, and it's a lot about vibe. So it's like that must be even tougher. I mean, I can't imagine like
You know,
being triggered and then trying to
yeah.
you know
It's actually it's really interesting. When I was in college, I did not have earbuds
hmm
because I didn't, I don't know. I was in not in denial that I had it. I knew that I had it, but I was in denial that there was any type of way that I could help myself.
mm,
I just kind of assumed this is what it is. This is what it's going to be. I have to suffer through it. And I would be in, I minored in psychology because I was interested in this stuff. And I would be in like 200-person lectures where everyone's on a computer typing, and it would be hell. Like I would be counting down the minutes. I couldn't hear a word the teacher was saying. I would, run to the bathroom every 3 minutes to like hyperventilate.
mm,
So the fact that I got through that without earbuds, I bought earbuds like a year ago, actually.
Mm.
And now I'm a little worried because I can like barely take them off because they're so great. But I've noticed that for things like acting and modeling and singing, I'm so excited about what I'm doing and I'm so focused on what I'm doing and happy to be there that I usually honestly don't even notice triggers, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. Like stress exacerbates things. So if you
Hmm.
can obviously focus on the good parts of what you're doing, maybe that can help. Um,
Yeah.
and if
Yeah.
it does,
Like,
then just
you know,
grab
when the
it.
vibes are
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
right, right.
I have to admit though, I this hasn't happened in a really long time, but I was actually in a play. What was it? This past weekend, 2 weekends ago, something like that. And during our tech rehearsal, there was someone in the back of the theater eating a bag of chips, like open mouthed. And I was on stage listening to another actor, and I like was like quietly crying. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's really bizarre because usually acting is my happy place and usually I don't even notice those things. But for some reason, it was like, it was a rehearsal and the whole
Hmm.
theater was dead silent except for one person like attacking a bag of chips.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, I don't want this to start infiltrating my happy place. Like, no,
Right, right, right.
it was crushing. That's just a really specific recent example.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, were you
Otherwise,
able
usually
to?
good.
Yeah, okay. But you were able to get
No,
through, and or no?
honestly, yeah, but because
But
he stopped.
barely. Ah, okay. Oh, gotcha. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all surprise ourselves with what we're capable of getting through sometimes.
Hmm.
Like you think you can't, you feel like the world is caving in, everything is the worst it's ever going to be, it's never going to end, and then it ends, and you're like, okay, I did that.
Right. Yeah.
I made it
It's
through.
interesting. Yeah, the light switches pretty quick, right? Yeah, once you get out of a situation too, it's like it's almost like what was the problem? Unless you're in a
Was I
car and
bothered?
sticking your fingers in the
Yeah,
ears, but yeah, I
that's
think
so true.
it's probably how quickly our brain wants to just move on
I
from a
know, right?
situation.
I feel like
Um,
if it didn't do that, we probably wouldn't be able to go outside again,
right,
you
right.
know? Where our brains have
Yeah,
to be like, no, 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 it was fine. You can go back out. You're good.
right, right. Yeah, interesting. Okay, okay. And yeah, so those are right. And then yeah, I guess meeting other people. So I mean, you had that one friend that you started Misophonia memes with. Have you,
Hmm.
in your advocacy and like in real life, have you kind of are you like spreading the word New York and just kind of everyone?
Catch me on the street corners
Yeah,
handing
yeah,
out flyers.
right. Yeah, I'm
Um,
curious, like day to day, or do you kind of bump into more and more people? I'm sure a lot of people reach out online, and that must be rewarding
y-
in itself.
Honestly, it's so rewarding. Well, I've had a couple of people who know me find out that I have it and then reach out to me and be like, I have this too. And it's always like just the most exciting thing ever. It's weird because you don't want to celebrate it. Like
Right,
I'm
right.
very sad when people have misophonia because this is like really the worst thing ever. However, it's so exciting to have someone that you know be like, we're quietly struggling with the same thing. How cool is that?
Yeah,
Um, but the DMs on the Misophonia memes account is genuinely, it's like hard to describe how meaningful it is. But it's I mean I'm a person. I'm like, living in my parents' home, like on my phone, and I don't really think that I'm making that much of an impact. But then I get these DMs about people talking about how they learned about what it was through the account, how they're so excited to be interacting with other people in the comments, how they're building their own little groups online and they're meeting people and they felt so alone and now they don't. Oh, it's so emotional. But it's like that is so deeply powerful to know that people are struggling with the same thing that you're struggling with, and that all these thoughts in your head that you kind of hate yourself for having, other people are having. And it kind of, at least for me, it took all this pressure off of me in which I was like, I'm such a problem. I'm never going to be lovable because everyone around me is always going to have to cater to me. And that's so
Hmm.
awful for everyone else. And it took that a little bit off my shoulders because I was like, this is something that so many people are quietly experiencing. And I wouldn't ever judge them for having it. So why am I judging myself for having it? It was so deeply insane to
Yeah.
have that many people talking to me about it and validating it for myself and for them. And also just like thanking me for laughing, which is like the best. We
Yeah.
love
That's a
laughter.
true gift. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
medicine, right?
Yeah. A lot of us are comedians. Are practically comedians. I mean, Gene Gregory puts on a comedy festival. I mean, the current episode right now with Mary Rachel is hilarious,
Hmm.
and there's
I love
Martha
it.
who's actually in New York is hilarious. Yeah, and
Yay.
just kind of gets us through, and I'm sure it's therapy for you, like you said, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
um,
I've also I haven't been to therapy for this, which
I was doing the next
I don't
question.
yeah, I don't recommend that. I do think that people should go to therapy. I had what was it, like two or three negative experiences with therapists, and that
Mm,
unfortunately should not have deterred me as much as it did, but it really did. I was like, this is this is not for me at the moment. I will I will go
yeah.
when I am ready.
You went specifically looking for help for misophonia to a therapist?
I did. I
Yeah.
in college, I at a certain point honestly the reason that I didn't major in psychology was because of misophonia. I really was struggling to do well on those exams
Mm,
because I was having so much trouble paying attention in class, which was sad because I loved the topic and I really was otherwise engaged. But
yeah.
being in those classrooms it was like impossible for me to learn. So I just did a minor and not a major. But at a certain point, I was like, okay, maybe I should take this seriously. So I went to the Office of Disability Services and I explained to them what misophonia was. It turns out that another person had actually come in for the same reason, but they didn't really know how to help or what they could do. So they tried, but basically what they offered me was that I was allowed to sit in the lecture and record it so that I could go back to my dorm later and like re-listen to it. But I still
Okay.
needed to attend the class for attendance purposes.
So let me get this straight. They want you to
Yeah, it didn't.
sit there, listen to the triggers, record it,
Uh-huh.
go home, listen
Yep.
to the triggers again.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's funny because I tried to explain that to them and they didn't really get it, but you immediately understood the problem with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is validating. But yeah, that was their main advice. So that wasn't very helpful, but also part of the process for being registered with the Office of Disability Services was to have an evaluation with the school psychologist and then another evaluation with an outside psychologist or therapist. Um, so I had to meet with the school's person, and then I also
Mm,
had to like find and fund someone from outside of school. And
yourself.
yep, and both of those meetings went really poorly. The I think the outside therapist said something along the lines of like, wow, that's such an isolating thing to be going through. You must be so lonely. Like, are you worried about being alone forever?
Oh
And I
my.
was like, I might, I might leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think this is right. I think it's tough to have someone who doesn't know anything about what you're going through be in the position of having to guide you through it, you know?
I think that what that person said is probably I would think that's kind of on Psychiatry 101. That's like the first day list of things not to say.
I know. And she had such a nice office too. It was so misleading. I really thought it was going to be good.
Yeah, it's usually those ones. Um, in the Flatiron District or something, or
Yeah, they're like just there for the paycheck. Yeah.
interesting. Okay, so and since then, have you bothered to go back and try? I mean, from what I've heard, it's like yeah, you have to like do your legwork and research ahead of time to make sure
Right.
the person knows what they're talking about.
Honestly, I do recommend it for other people. I think therapy is incredible and amazing and great. I just personally haven't been feeling like it's the right thing for me at the moment. And also it's weird to be at home, and I've become very introverted, as I'm sure most of us have,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not really dealing with issues as much as I used to when I was going out a lot. So I have this like false sense of calm in the fact that I'm not being triggered as much as I used to.
Yeah, it's interesting. We kind of create our own little. I'm thinking of the analogy of like the eye of the storm of kind of hurricane,
Hmm.
where we kind of like it's probably super noisy and triggery around us, but we kind of control our environment, which
But we're
happens
in the
when we get
calm part.
older.
All is
Yeah,
well.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, but as soon as, as soon as we want to step out, we're kind of effed. Yeah, I mean, I tell a lot of people, oh, especially young people. Who
Hmm.
are like freaking out about like, is this gonna? Because I'm sure for you and
Oh,
for all of
yeah.
us,
Those
the
DMs
number
are
of
scary.
triggers goes up and up and up, and so people are like,
Yeah.
oh my god. Some people I've talked to about, or have been institutionalized already before college, and so it's like,
Hmm.
but I tell people, yeah, yeah, as you get older, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, your triggers might get more numerous, but you have more control over your environment
Yes.
um
100%.
and
And you
just
also have experience with
right.
knowing that you can get through it, knowing how maybe what you need, you like pick up tips and tricks for yourself on how to get through it. Do you know
And
what gave
hopefully,
me
yeah.
hope? My mom has, I mean, she hasn't eradicated it from herself at all, but she always tells me that she spent a good chunk of her childhood and early adulthood kind of forcing herself to get through it. Well, also because she didn't know what it was. But she got to a point where she is able to tune things out now as an adult, and she's able to not notice things and not be bothered by them. And she's just like found this way to
Mm.
completely be zen. And it's exciting that that's potentially the future for us.
Yeah, to try to really tune things out. And part of it
Hmm.
might just be like being really into what you're doing in the moment, like you're starting to experience with, some of the
Absolutely.
jobs you're at. Yeah, I
Definitely.
mean, and I like a broken record. Tell people before meals, just kind of like, tell your brain before you start, before you sit down, like this is only going to be a 20-30 minute thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
nothing's going to jump on you and, maul you down. It's just some sounds. And yeah, like maybe focusing on something without maybe getting OCD or something about it. But
Absolutely.
like
That was one of the things that I did in those big lectures that I hated was I would just go online. I would just be if everyone's on their
mm,
computer, I can also be on my computer distracting myself with a screen,
yeah,
Like
yeah,
screens are good for helping, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah. Right. And for stuff like this, yeah, you take what you can get.
Hmm.
When your mom was growing up, did she have a well, supportive surroundings? Was it adversarial? I'm just curious if she remembers how things were for her when she grew up.
Yeah, I she doesn't talk about it too much, but from what I know, I would assume that she kept it fully to herself,
Mm,
I think, because I think she mentioned a couple times that potentially her parents might have shown certain signs that
hmm.
they also had some type of issue with sounds, but
Yeah.
I don't think that they ever spoke about it openly. And she's also like, similar to me, very not wanting to impose on others, very much wanting to, fight her own demons on her own time. So
Right.
I think that she just really just kept it fully to herself. I think that was
Right.
why she was so surprised when I was like, I need help with this. This is bad.
Was she wondering like, why don't you, Chloe, just
Why
just
don't you like
chill
go to your
out?
room and just figure it
Yeah.
out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just ignore it for the rest of your life, like I did. What's the
Yeah,
problem?
exactly. She's like, look, it worked.
Yeah. Exactly. Uh, Interesting.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, maybe, yeah. Do you want to talk about some of the, are you're doing a lot of creative stuff? Is that you said
I
that that's
am.
kind of like a distraction, but is it also do you feel like kind of like I don't know, it's kind of like a therapy in itself, where you kind of do you find yourself putting your emotions in there, maybe
Oh,
you're triggered
definitely.
earlier in the day, and it's like you can kind of draw on that kind of whatever that emotion is and put it in your
Oh,
work.
definitely. Absolutely. Yeah, especially with acting and singing
Mm-hmm.
specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I think they go hand in hand. I think it's fun to act when you're singing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I've definitely done a couple of auditions where I've been upset and then I've like cried in the audition in a scene where there's crying and been like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that was useful.
yeah, exactly.
No, it's really good. I'm baseline an emotional person. I don't know if that has anything to do with my misophonia or if I'm just like an emotional person, but it is nice to be able to kind of vent them out via an angry song or, you know, an upsetting scene, something where you can kind of allow yourself to experience those things and let it be okay and let it kind of come out, which for me is definitely what I always need to let it out. Otherwise, I just can stay angry and upset for like days.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Let it fester. Do you consider
Yeah, it's
yourself
the worst.
like a, it's called like a highly sensitive person? Like you
I
feel
do.
more
Yep.
self-aware of like
I've
not
seen
just
the
how
YouTube
you're
videos.
feeling,
Yeah.
yeah, but like how you know you're able to. I mean, it's to be a superpower. Like you're able to kind of read other people in the
Mm.
room a lot better. I don't know. I definitely sometimes feel like I kind of have a good command over what everyone's you know feeling
Oh,
in the room.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And do you think, I mean, is it maybe because we're so attuned to what other people are doing at all times? Like we're listening to the sounds they're making. We're seeing if they've noticed that we're upset. We're seeing how they're, I wonder if that's related at all.
I think it's yeah. I mean, I think it's more general like hyper awareness of
Hmm.
what's around. It's like somehow maybe the way we grew up, we were just yeah, yeah as we were toddlers, just going into preschool, whatever. Just kind of somehow
Hmm.
we were more attuned to the what other kids were feeling, or what was what
Yeah.
what parents and teachers maybe were thinking and feeling, and then that like somehow kind of like progressed into maybe a hypersensitivity to some of
Hmm.
these things because obviously it's not just sounds. I'm assuming you're glaring at people who are chewing gum from when you can't even hear them or
Oh
eating.
yeah. I also have
Yeah,
I also have misokinesia. So
yeah, right,
sadly.
right.
Yep. So, someone shaking their leg, sure. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
notice that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
also, I mean, I also have like general social anxiety, so I'm also really attuned to other people in that way. Like, are they do they hate me? Are they thinking something
Gotcha.
negative about me? Did I say something and someone's reacting poorly? I'm definitely like very aware of other people.
So that part of it, and yeah, I mean, you can see how a lot of these things overlap. Does that? I mean,
Hmm.
it's with kind of the vocations that you chose. That must be kind of, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a lot to negotiate. I mean, that
Oh yeah.
sometimes it's got to be difficult. Yeah, and I mean,
Oh
not
yeah.
just the chip guy in the back, but a lot of that stuff. But I mean, maybe there's some tools that you learn to get through that that can be useful for misophonia. Are
I
there?
think yeah, 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 go ahead.
Do you just let yourself kind of like take a I mean, I'm sure you take breaks many times whenever you need to. That's definitely a strength is being able to have that agency. Yeah, I'm curious kind of how you go through all that.
Totally. I think that one is probably more of an age thing. I mean, I'm not 90 years old, but I am I am in my mid
I have
20s.
I just talked to an 87-year-old, so that'll be coming
Did
out
you
before this
really?
episode
Oh,
at
I'm
some
so
point.
excited to
Yeah,
listen to
yeah.
that. Yay. Oh, that's going to be so interesting. I I do think that I'm approaching that age where you kind of start to get a feel for who you are and how you can handle things, and you
Mm-hmm.
start to build up a little repertoire of go-to helpful things.
Right.
um, I think a lot of it is just remembering that I will always be meaner to myself than other people will. Always. Like that's
Mm,
just a given. I'm always assuming that people don't like me. I'm always assuming that I'm doing the wrong thing. And really and truly, 99% of the time, that's not happening. I'm a generally likable, kind person. But in my brain, it's like, a little war So
Yeah. Do
just,
you not it's like I mean I guess tangents are good. Do you find that kind of ebbs and flows a little bit? Like are there certain times of the day or because
hmm.
I actually had that last night where I just couldn't sleep because I don't know just I felt like everything I was doing was not good enough and people were gonna
Oh,
get
absolutely. Oh,
be
I'm
disappointed
sorry.
in me and stuff like well it's fine
No, it's
it
the
happens
worst.
every once
It's
in a
the
while
worst.
but
No, I
then
empathize though.
yeah then I'm sure I joked about it and laughed about it to myself and went to sleep. So,
Oh,
but yeah,
absolutely.
it's yeah. And actually for a while, I'm gonna turn this into me. There was many years, I think, especially in college, where it was like if I woke up between the hours of 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., I knew I was going to be
Hmm.
super depressed. All the everything I think about is super depressed. And then as soon as it hit 6 a.m., somehow a light bulb went on, and I was like totally fine.
Oh, that's
So I don't know
fascinating.
if it's something about that time, but or
Oh,
I don't
that's
know.
so interesting. Do you know what? For me, it's if I undersleep or if I oversleep.
Mm,
If I don't sleep
yeah.
enough, I think I made a meme about this recently, but like triggers are 15 times worse. My fuse is like a centimeter.
Oh yeah.
Everything is upsetting, everything is a problem.
Right.
And that is too little sleep. And then if I sleep too much, I'm like, okay, well, we all have this one life on earth and I have spent it sleeping. I am a disgrace. Nothing will ever be accomplished in my lifetime. Like really
Yeah.
the pendulum swings quite far. I think
Right.
why is sleep so important? It really does seem to be very important for us.
Yeah. Well, for misophones or just the Homo
Maybe the
sapiens in
human race.
general.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess.
I think. I mean, that's when it's not just physical rest. It's like mental rest, but also
Hmm.
the short term memories go into long term memories, and I think your brain does a
Mm.
lot of like sweeping and vacuuming and stuff.
Oh, I
So
love that.
I think your
Just some
brain is
tidying.
actually I don't know if I may be well no I'm being completely scientifically accurate but I think that maybe your brain is actually more active sometimes at night than kind of in the
Mm.
daytime.
Hmm.
Especially if you're just sitting around watching TV. But there's a lot that gets taken care of overnight. I think so. Um,
Isn't that cool?
yeah,
Love that.
yeah,
That's so cool of our brains to do that for us.
yeah,
Big
yeah.
fan. Big fan.
Little backup, scheduled backup there. Um,
Obsessed. Yeah,
cool.
that's just like such a such an interesting thing about uh, misophonia people and also just like humans in general, the fact that we can be so hyper focused on certain things that maybe don't matter. It's just like
Mm,
evolutionarily, I always wonder what was the point of making me stress about that conversation I had 2 weeks ago? Like evolutionarily, what is what's the end goal of that
well,
for my
remember
brain?
evolution is like a lot of experiments. Like it doesn't always go
Mm,
in one straight line. That's when like branches of people and maybe branches of characteristics and thinking thought processes die off. Not that we're going
oh,
to die
that'd be
off. People are going to
exciting.
have misophonia, but I think part of it is yeah. I mean, a lot of these feelings, like these lizard brain feelings, are just like ancient threat, like real threat levels that
Mm,
threats that or are the part of our brain that is meant to recognize those threats. And maybe it's just our brain is always evolving. We just
yeah,
maybe we're in this one little experiment of like, hey, what if I just freak out over every sound?
yeah. Everything,
uh,
we're just in a simulation, anyways. So
right. Well, that's the other
I think
right.
I think I was reading something recently or saw something somewhere about how in ye olden times it was a lot about physical survival. And now, because we've kind of padded our existence with so much comfort, like, with
Mm-hmm.
homes and appliances and things made very easy for some of us,
Yep.
that the new survival thing is social survival. That's like the new thing that we're all tackling. So everybody's trying to be the best at socialization and finding a partner through socialization. And that kind of seems to be where we're at. I was like, okay, if that's the reason for my anxiety, like, sure, I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm down.
Yeah. And not to give the cliche that the world's accelerating and getting more kind of intense, but there is something about that where there must be maybe there is a point where we're not, our ability to evolve is being outpaced by the level of change, and then we're just kind of like maybe short circuiting in some places.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we'll
Absolutely.
evolve eventually, but there could be, a lot of stuff has changed in the last 100 years in terms of sounds and our
Oh goodness,
need
yeah.
to focus on things. And it could be just
Absolutely.
that we're not keeping up. But yeah, yeah, interesting to think about. And
Oh, absolutely. I wonder if cave people had misophonia.
yeah, that's interesting. I mean, all you heard back then was what crackle of fire and the wind.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they didn't
And
have
probably a
eating
lot of
manners.
babies. Yeah, right.
Yeah, they had
Right.
babies,
Right. I watched the Flintstones. There was not a lot of eating manners back in
yeah.
the day.
But there were babies and they were cute.
Right. Right.
Those Flintstone
Um,
babies.
yeah. That was Flintstones was probably before your time. I don't know if you or have probably watched reruns
I've seen a
at
couple.
least. Yeah.
I don't know if this is telling of anything, but I ate Flintstone vitamins growing up.
Oh, hey, I did too.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something there. Should be my first
Oh
question on every
no, they're
podcast
causing
episode.
misophonia.
What multivitamins did your parents give you when?
We are just completely slandering a very good company, and I'm here for
Right.
it. They start getting letters like, "What have you done?"
Yeah, exactly. Be picketing in front of the Flintstones
Yeah,
vitamin headquarters.
I'll go support the cause.
Yep, yep. Yeah, I guess you were saying kind of in ye old times. Do you want to
Mm-hmm.
maybe kind of like briefly give a little shout out to some of your other ventures? I love the historically badass parades, if I'm
Aw,
saying that
thank
correctly.
you. Yes,
Podcast, yeah,
yes.
amazing idea. And there are some that, yeah, there are some great ones.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
and how did that come around? And as yeah, do you want to tell a little bit about that? I'm curious. I don't want
It's
to get into your YouTube channel too.
oh goodness. You're like my mom. I appreciate it. My mom's always like, she does so much stuff. You got to check it out. Um, it started similarly to the meme account. It was a friend, an actor friend, and she's a history buff. She
Hmm.
studied history, specifically medieval history in college, if I'm getting that right. And she was kind of telling me about Henry VIII's wives when we were hanging out once, which in retrospect is funny.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really interesting, and I potentially because of misophonia didn't listen too much in my history class growing up. There, I wasn't a bad student, but I did have an active imagination, and so I missed a lot of interesting stuff. And like she always says, we also aren't taught that much about these really cool women in history. They
Hmm.
just I don't know if it's there's no time on the syllabus or, I'm sure there are other reasons, but we just don't really learn about them. And so we came up with the idea for a podcast where she would surprise me with a new person each month and kind of tell me about it. And I play the role of the everyday man who doesn't know anything about this and is
Hmm.
curious and wants to know more. And we try to make it funny and interesting, but honestly, exactly the same thing. We didn't really think anyone would listen to it, and we really just did it for fun, like
Yeah.
in on the floor of her apartment, sharing a microphone. Like, didn't think too much about it, but it has kind of turned into its own thing as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, and bring it back to a little bit to misophonia. I always
Hmm.
I'm sure we all Google like historical people who may have had misophonia.
Yes. Oh my
there's
goodness.
suspicions of Kafka and Arnold
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Schopenhauer, the
Hmm.
philosopher. Charles Babbage is whined about, because
Yep.
shit was really loud back then. When you had horses around and all that
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
Any
Oh,
interesting
absolutely.
kind of findings? Pre
Um,
1900 or pre 1950.
Pre 1950. I think like Dickens maybe was Dickens one. There was
I
there
feel like I may have seen that. Yeah.
right. There's something about that. There was also something about and I'm blanking on their name right now, but the person in in England, the Prime Minister of England, whose name I'm blanking on, like truly one of the most famous
Oh,
prime
Churchill.
ministers. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Churchill. I think I read somewhere I don't think that's pre 1900s, but
No, no,
Churchill
yeah, yeah,
Churchill was a
around the
big
world
one.
wars. Oh,
Yeah,
okay, kind of.
there was something about I read a story, and again, I'm not fact checking any of this, so grain of
It's
salt,
fine.
but
Is it this fact checking is very pre
I
2000,
know.
so
Yeah, who fact checks anyways? Then there was a story about someone was walking outside his window whistling, and he was like, absolutely
and he
not.
started World War II.
Yeah, and that's actually little known fact, the cause of World War II. Yeah.
Yep, yep.
I think he like made his servant go outside and make the person leave or something. He like needed absolute quiet whenever he was doing anything. I don't know. I
Interesting.
mean,
Yeah,
if you're asking me, that seems pretty in line with this
yeah,
disorder.
yep, yep. Could be. I didn't. Yeah, I don't know if I'd heard Churchill. Yeah, that'd be a big one. I mean, he was always knee deep in whiskey too, which is not a good thing to be on when you're
No,
very
not
sensitive to
particularly.
triggers. Um,
I think he also there's something about it's just the fact that he was like so angry.
yeah, yeah. It's a
And
good person to have in control of
right?
weapons, and
Yeah, I wonder if he was like constantly being triggered and was like, I just can't take it anymore. Stop
right,
whistling.
right. You
There's
would
also
think
that thing
being
about like, can you imagine not being bothered by things? It's like so far beyond my scope of like, there's a part
right.
of me that's like, well, of course he was bothered by whistling. Like, that's not misophonia. Like, that's just annoying for everyone. But then I'm
Hmm.
reminded time and time again that's actually not how people feel.
Yeah, yeah. It always amazes me when people say they were doing, yeah, like if they're making some weird sounds, that it's like, oh, there's nothing wrong with them. They're just being completely normal. My brain just cannot understand that. I mean, it wants
Yeah,
half
or
of it wants to, half of it doesn't.
absolutely.
Half of it
And people
can't.
who say like, "Oh yeah, that was a little annoying," but then I just like stop paying attention to it.
Yeah.
What? You stopped? You were in control of stopping paying attention to it?
Well, I think a lot of
Wow.
people also try to self-medicate, as
Mm-hmm.
as I'm sure happens with, um, alcohol. Maybe Churchill was doing that, or drugs. Have you ever tried to, I don't know, self-medicate on, or maybe think that?
I have not. Well, no, I definitely shouldn't say that I'm sure it would work. That's a bad thing to say. I'm assuming it could work.
I think it could to
I
a
haven't
certain,
tried it.
certain
Yeah.
levels and certain types, but yeah, I think it's rarely, yeah, it really stays within the useful level. Let's put it that
Right.
way.
And then if you become addicted and you can't be
Right,
without it, that's its own issue that is now
right,
beginning.
right. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Not a
That
good
isn't.
place
I
to
mean,
go.
the on the rare occasions that I've been drunk, I don't think I've noticed misophonia, but I'm sure I was just focused on other things.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like a night out,
Yeah.
it's usually loud.
Yep. Well, cool. Yeah, we're heading to about an hour. I know we could go on. We might have to have you on at some
No, it
another
goes
point
by so
later. But
fast.
I know I always tell people. Um, but yeah, anything, yeah, anything else you want to share? I mean, obviously, I'll have like, not that people need reminding, but all the links to your accounts
Hmm.
and whatnot. Anything kind of else you wanna tell people as we you know about your experiences with misophonia, and maybe also based on what you've heard in some of your
Hmm.
DMs.
Oh yeah. Honestly, I think the main thing that I try to tell people is that they're not as alone that they think they are. I think that's a really big thing. I think not that that therapist was right because I don't want to give her credit for anything, but
No,
it
no,
can be a
she's
very
going down.
isolating. Yeah, she's incorrect, but it can be very isolating for sure. And
Yeah.
something that I've heard a lot in my DMs is I felt so alone. The people in my life don't understand, and that makes me feel, uh, you know, XYZ. And I
Hmm.
think something that I'm always trying to tell people is that it's so much more common than we think it is. I mean, I remember finding out that the Misophonia Reddit had like
I
40,000
know.
people on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And to think that those are the people who looked it up and found that specific page,
Yeah.
there's so many other people who don't know what the name for it is, don't know if they have enough of a problem with sounds to identify with it,
Mm-hmm.
don't even think that it's like not even in their brain, but they definitely have it. I mean, it is so much more common than we think it is. And at least for me, that just makes me feel so not alone, so much more understood, so much more validated, so much happier in a way. Again, I'm really not happy that people have it, but like,
No, I know
you
what
know,
you mean. Yeah.
like happier that we can all commiserate and understand. And also, I mean, huge shout out to what you're doing with your podcast, because hearing firsthand experiences from people who have it, people who are talking about things that they don't think even matter, like even just like little things that they mention while they're talking to you, have stuck out to me so much and meant so much to me, where I'm like, oh, I identify with that. I thought that was just me. That's crazy. I
Yeah.
think things like that can really be comforting. And also the fact I also like, the first thing I did was I binged all of the episodes where you had some type of psychologist or like
Right.
professional on, and
Yeah.
hearing about the research being done and the people who are taking it seriously, even if they're not being paid, which is like, the goodness of their hearts is incredible. But like,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that people are taking it seriously, knowing that it's real, knowing that you can come talk to me in my DMs. I'm sure, a lot of people are very happy to talk about it, because I mean, this is an example. I've been talking about this like nonstop for an hour and like,
Yeah.
I'm just so excited to talk about it because I'm so embarrassed about it otherwise. I'm like
Yeah.
grappling with that, but like, to talk to people who understand, like, feel free to reach out to people. There are people who understand. There are people who can give you tips on what to do. There are people who know the difficulty that you're going through, and you don't have to feel like it's your own struggle. I think that's like the number one thing I always try to tell people, because it's so moving when you really realize how true it is.
Yep. Yeah. Great words. Can have said it better myself. Yeah. And
And also
yeah.
memes, laugh at memes,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Use that. I try to tell people like that. Yeah. Laughing about it helps. And yeah, the fact that
Absolutely.
a Misophonia is doing things to make people laugh. I mean, that's huge. So thank you for everything you're doing. And yeah, you're helping a lot of people. This conversation is going
Hey,
to help
you
a lot of
too.
people too. Wow. Wasn't that great? Thank you, Chloe. Yes, maybe later this year or next, we'll have to have you back on. If you liked this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this podcast. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast, or go to the website, misophoniapodcast.com. It's even easier just to send me a message on Instagram, in my DMs at Misophonia Podcast. Follow there, or Misophonia Podcast on Facebook. Support the show if you can by visiting the Patreon at patreon.com/misophoniapodcast. The music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.